Do you want to make more money from your music? In this video, I'm chatting to Mark Lawrence from Centric Electronic to chat about publishing and how it works and how their new deal with Beatport is going to earn you more revenue for your tracks. Let's jump in. Hey, I'm Graham Farmer from Data Transmission, and I am a Twitch partner and Twitch streamer and YouTuber and Instagrammer, and I give tips and advice to DJs and producers. I also run a blog called Data Transmission. I've done that for 13 years, and on that blog we have interviews with artists, labels, we talk about music. In these videos, I try to get to the nitty-gritty of the music business and give you tips and advice to get you, the artists, further in the industry. We look at things like social media, strategy, streaming, and talk about things like publishing. In this video today, I welcome Mark Lawrence. Mark's essentially the king of publishing. He runs a company called Black Rock Publishing, and they publish some of the biggest artists in the business. He knows everything there is to know about publishing and making more money for your music. It's not just about the sales, there's also the other side, your rights to your music and how they work. He also works for a company called Centric Electronic, and they're basically an online platform where you can register your tracks as you're making them so that you can start earning off them from streams and social and people playing your music out, essentially. In this video, we chat in depth about Centric Electronic. We talk about the deal they've done with Beatport. We go in depth about publishing. I hope you enjoy this. Let's dive in. Mark Lawrence, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you, Graham. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm thankful to be in sunny Mallorca, not misty Berlin or rainy London. So, yeah, in the right place to be.
Milton Keynes is very sunny this morning. I've just been for a run and I was sweated like a trooper because I had 2 layers on.
Sweating like a trooper. Thank you very much for that image.
Right, lovely. So today we're going to talk about publishing.
We are.
Which is a subject I bash my one-to-ones clients with as much as possible. So I really want to get into it with you. Part of it is Beatport. Obviously you're part of Centric. You work for Centric,
yeah.
and you've just linked up with Beatport. Should we talk about that first?
Yeah, go for it.
Or should we just talk about should we just give you the listeners a little background about yourself?
I'm easy, whichever way you want to go. I mean, if you want the potted history of myself, I suppose I've got a game of 4 halves, or quarters rather, to be precise. So there was the period of time where I was at school, went at university and at college. 16 in 1989, so therefore a history in house music as a fan. Mistakenly left university and spent 10 years in banking, which is a very random thing to do, and realised that thankfully soon enough to be able to get out. And I got out and moved to a job at MCPS, and as was then part of PRS, did 10 years there. And I guess one of the things I observed the most whilst at PRS, which is the Performing Rights Society that looks after songwriter and publisher rights in the UK, is just how much prejudice there is towards electronic music and how little respect there is given to it. And so in the 4 years I was there as director of membership, I launched various different campaigns to try and bring electronic music writers and artists and producers into the fold, to use better language, to identify the music better in nightclubs, and realised the cards were kind of stacked against it. So I left and did 2 things. I left and set up Black Rock Publishing, which is now the kind of concierge division for electronic music within Centric Music Publishing, and also to head up the Association for Electronic Music, which I did for 4 years. And so that kind of gave me the big picture insight into the electronic music industry, but also very close up and personal insight into the issues with electronic music publishing. Mm-hmm. And then in 2017, about 3 years ago, Chris, who runs Big Centric, came out to see us here in Mallorca and said, "Why don't you guys become our electronic music division?" Mm-hmm. And then everything just lifted off really for the publishing company more than it had done before. And within months, we had struck deals with Toolroom, with Ronnie Size, and carried on going from there until the recently announced deal with Beatport.
Cool. Okay, so you underwrite you do Toolroom's publishing?
Yeah, we do a lot of what we call B2B, so business to business publishing deals. We're behind a number of different businesses for their publishing, or not necessarily behind, in partnership with. And so artists, managers, agents, we work with a lot of people in the electronic music industry.
Is that because you've got a piece of tech that makes it a lot easier, or is it just know-how?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the key things, I suppose, it's a combination of tech and know-how, and you get to a point as well. I guess you've kind of got to a degree scale, which gives you sort of strength in the industry to do deals that others can't. So we go direct as possible into as many territories as possible. So we don't use what they call sub-publishers. So when we register a song or a track, I'll try and use kind of a producer language rather than songwriter language, then it's simultaneously going out into over 100 territories worldwide, which means that we're not giving percentages away and we're not allowing the data to go wrong, which means that we're agile. We've got great systems, which means we can distribute quarterly, so we get money to people accurately and quickly. We've got a great team in the sync teams, that's pitching music to film and TV and ads. We've got great creative teams who are working on over 100 collaborations at any one point in time between producers and singer-songwriters. And then we've got an ever-growing passionate team of people who love music of all genres, and particularly for my side, electronic music. So there's relationships in there, there's passion, there's tech. It's the perfect melting pot to specialize in electronic music.
Perfect. Okay, so and that's from a centric point of view. So from an artist that's listening to this, that's releasing on some small labels, that's just building their career, they can register all that through the normal Centric website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Electronic website. Guys, I'm going to put that link in the subject, in the thing we like, cards and the information for you. Right. So that's perfect. Let's just briefly tell people. I mean, the publishing is a big thing, so let's just give them anyone listening the brief.
What is publishing?
Yeah, what is and why you should have your finger on the ball. I know a lot of DJs and artists that have gone back over their publishing this year and because of lack of revenues and touring revenues,
Yeah, I think it's always an overlooked and, dare I say, complicated part of the music industry because it kind of predates all the cool bits. So songwriting, or ironically, was the first bit of the music industry before it was really an industry. So it's ironic it's now become so front and center with everything that's happened. And most producers start their career working to sign tracks to labels and kind of all too often think that's it. Electronic music producers, in a way, break the conventions of the normal music industry as was. And as was, you would have songwriters that wrote songs in darkened rooms or big studios and maybe played some instruments whilst they did it, and maybe wrote some notes down and some words, and then presented that to a publisher and to a label or to some artist who would subsequently record it. So if you think Lennon and McCartney were the songwriters, they didn't at that point record the tracks. So those songs have rights in them, which is the performing and mechanical right, which is the right to get money when a song is played in public, and the right to get money when they are copied. And back in the day, those copies would have been vinyl. Latterly, they would have been CDs, and now they've become downloads. And then, obviously, a song is then recorded by a recording artist, and at that point, it's signed to a label, and then it's released, and it goes on radio, and then it gets purchased by people. And that's the piece of the music industry I guess most people are familiar with and see is record label, recording artist, track, go. So the reason why electronic music kind of breaks all of those conventions is that one person can be sat in a darkened bedroom for days on end, simultaneously being songwriter, recording artist, producer, remixer, keyboard player, drummer, all of those things, usually in one piece of equipment or in a few, but don't identify as the singer or the songwriter or therefore don't identify with the need to be published. And because, of course, a lot of the time, as you're the recording artist, you're not giving your music to anybody else to record it. Possibly it might be sampled. And you're not expecting anyone to cover it, although that's actually now starting to happen. You do now see, of course, very clear covers starting to appear of original house music. So you are starting to see, Voodoo Rays and things like that coming around second time around, but that's a whole other story. Often electronic music producers don't get publishing deals because they just don't see that they're part of that world. But absolutely they are. And what being published means is that you collect royalties for radio play, live play, TV play, in-store play, on plane, in boat, in high street, downloads, streams, probably 240 different revenue streams that far and away exceed the revenue streams that you get from a record contract. They take longer, they can be in smaller amounts, but overall, they become a very, very valuable revenue stream. And more importantly, a publisher's role on top of purely collecting money is to connect you to singers and songwriters and remixers and other artists in other genres to create wonderful new music, and then take that new music and use it somewhere else. Use it in film, use it in TV, use it in ads, use it in games. So our job is to just keep making music with songwriters and to keep pushing that music for use elsewhere, rather than simply be in the kind of hamster wheel of production gig. We try to kind of keep going, do more with it.
That's incredible. And I guess live stream falls into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a bit of a wild west when it comes to live streaming. So there are those. Mixcloud, of course, is the kind of the saving grace of live streaming, and has tirelessly worked for years to get the licenses in place to do the right thing. There are those that are emerging now that want to do the right thing, and I'm sure will do the right thing. And there's lots of technology, some of which is supported by Beatport, which is identifying the music that's been played in live streams, so that the reporting of what's been played in live streams can ultimately fall into the deals that they have to make sure the right people get paid. So there's lots of intent to do the right thing, and there's lots of difficulty in the right thing being done, because different publishers and different rights holders around the world want different amount of money out of live streams, and not everybody's aligned. Some people prefer to block things, some people like to make money from things. So it's still not a settled market in the way that streaming and downloads and CDs are a settled market, but I'm sure it'll happen soon, and the balance will be there.
Is that why sometimes you get a block from different countries? Is it because different rights holders are doing different things?
Yeah, I mean, the blocks are predominantly from distributors acting on behalf of labels. So broadly speaking, publishers like to make money rather than block stuff.
Yeah.
And broadly speaking, labels are, depending on where they are, and distributors, depending on where they are more likely to want to block the use of music, especially where the use of it isn't monetized, because they want to control where the use is. So you will have anything from don't have it streamed pre-release, don't have promos streamed, don't have it streamed at all. There's varying rules and various mechanisms in which tracks can be blocked, and you tend to find the majors have a broader blocking strategy than indies. I guess the bigger you get, the more control you want over where music is accessed and played.
Yeah, I guess I get down to their massive promotional plans and how and when it's being rolled out, and if some Sharon down the road is playing on a live stream, a track that she's got on a promo that you don't want.
But it may not have even been on a promo. It might have been a ripped copy as well. I mean, it keeps getting amplified. I mean, that's the irony, is that a ripped copy, heaven forbid that should happen, of course, and no one, I'm sure, listening to this podcast would want that to be the case, would do it, but would potentially find its way into a DJ set on a live stream, and therefore a label would be totally within its rights to block that because it wasn't purchased legitimately.
Yeah.
Whereas ironically, the underlying rights that the publisher looks after would still be capable of being claimed because it's the underlying song.
Yes. Okay, that's good. That makes sense. Fuck,
Yeah.
it's such a head fuck, isn't it? It's like you're thinking of buying it, but you're not actually thinking of the stream. Actually, the writer would get it, which is then the DJ, the producer. I guess it's the wording as well. It's quite old fashioned as well.
That was always been my challenge. One of the things I probably spend the most time doing is translating old to new, and translating kind of publishing language into electronic music language, and never more so than when you get into things like sampling, where everyone thinks the sample that you need to clear is the record sample, so the thing that you hear, but forget that every time you put a sample into a new track, you're creating a new copyright, and the publisher needs to clear that as well, because it's no longer the original song, it's a new one, so you have to clear on both sides at the same time.
Right.
And you find many label and many an artist fall foul of forgetting to talk to original publisher to say that 20 seconds that I've put in my new 6-minute 40 tech house track, can I get that cleared, please?
Yeah, I think I see it so many times. It's like, should I have this sample cleared? Yes, you probably should. Yes. If you think you should.
And then half the time they'll go and clear the record sample, the masters, but won't go and clear the rest.
Okay, so that's the brief. I hope you all understood that, and now understand that you should be doing this. I remember I saw you at a conference in IMS, and you were talking about publishing, and you said something about that you should just publish tracks as you're making them. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the rule of thumb for me is as soon as you finished it, publish it, because someone in a normal year, not this year, someone, right, even this year potentially, but the minute it's possible to play it out is the minute it's licensable, collectible, and royalties will be payable. So if you went and performed a gig, even potentially online, even put it in a mix on SoundCloud, put it in a mix on Mixcloud, it's royalty payable to you as the songwriter at that point via your PRO and your publisher, even if it's unsigned. And I think a lot of the time people assume that you can't publish something until it's signed to a label or released, and it's totally the opposite. They're two completely separate strands of business and rights and royalties. So you can completely own your publishing income pre-release and make money from pre-release tracks. I remember Carl B in Malta had a track that he pitched to Solomon, to Dynamic, and I think Solomon had played it relentlessly throughout the summer, but then in the end just chose not to sign it, and it ended up going to Joris Voorn's label. But for every large festival and club play that Solomon had dropped the track, we collected royalties for Carl for that. So kind of on a publishing side, it didn't matter if Carl had signed it or not at that point, because we were collecting either way, because we were collecting for Carl, not collecting from Solomon. So
yes,
yeah, that was probably the smartest example I can give, where it just makes it just get in there quick.
And as an artist, you can just do that through the Centric Electronic system. It's just through one website. It's pretty simple, I've been told.
Yes, yeah. It's about probably a minute to set up an account and about 30 seconds to register a track.
Okay,
so you can upload MP3s into it as well.
Guys, girls, go and do that. Do it for everything. Right, let's talk about the deal with Beatport. This is exciting. Yes. I read the press release and went, "Oh, that's really, really cool." Let's talk. Let's talk about the whole thing. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was from various different perspectives for a number of years. I think we've been staring at how the collection system works for downloads for electronic music, and realised that it was slow and inaccurate and a bit of a leaky bucket. So Terry and I at Beatport have been discussing it probably since Bright Music Conference about 4 years ago, that there was something here that we needed to explore. And from our side of Centric, we kind of reconfigured the way that our rights flow around the world to make this possible for us and us alone. And it's boring and technical, so I won't go into it, but essentially we're in a unique place to do a direct deal with Beatport and give Beatport artists and labels access in return to our publishing capability. And so we did two things, basically. Essentially, how licensing works for Beatport via the performing right organizations back to publishers, back to artists currently, is that every country has a performing right organization or mechanical right organization or collective management, whatever you want to call it. It has a company that sits there and says, for sales in Uruguay, for sales in India, for sales in France, for sales in whichever country you're in, there will be a license with Beatport at a rate, asking for data that pays through. And that's happening in hundreds of territories around the world. And so what happens then, because dance music is this kind of thin ozone layer of sales and income around the world, is that, I don't know, the 15 downloads you might have in Romania don't trigger the right threshold. So the money just stays in Romania and then after a while disappears. Or the data in Romania isn't as accurate as it could be. So the money never finds its match to the recording that's made, or the sub-publisher hasn't done its job properly, or basically it's just a leaky bucket where in every country there's a risk that the money won't get collected properly, or the money won't be enough to pass through to somewhere else. And so over time, less and less money is coming from the downloads back to the artists. This isn't sales, this is publishing, obviously. So we took the approach, which was to say to Beatport, well, look, we can license you directly for all of the people that we publish in electronic music and all of the music that we publish them for. Why don't we just cut out all of these middlemen and just do one deal for the world, invoice you every 3 months, and then pay our artists subsequently? And so that's what we did. And that means that we can, instead of relying on hundreds of other organizations to work on their own pace, at their own time, with their own policies, and just drop money out the bottom faster than you can kind of run up the stairs with it, we could just do it all direct. And the impact of that will be more accurate, bigger, quicker collections. And also in return, of course, what that means is that all of those Beatport Beatport DJs, Beatport artists, anybody who has sold or streamed via Beatport has access to the Beatport publishing portal as well, which will send details of, and you can sign up there and have access to the same services.
So Beatport, sorry to be stupid, but so Beatport, they have to pay the publishing for every download they sell. Is that right? Is that
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So loosely speaking, although of course every different organization has a different deal somewhere, and all of those are under non-disclosure agreements, but broadly speaking, 10% of the download goes to publishing royalties.
Right.
And all of those 10% everywhere are supposed to all come back as still 10% and get paid across to people. But what happens is 10% over there becomes 5, or that 10% never makes its way home. And it's kind of the job of the publisher is to sort of get all of those sales from every country, all those royalties, and sort of pull them all back through the machine and make them as big as possible. And what was happening is they were losing value constantly because data was rubbish or processes were rubbish. To be blunt. And so we've just kind of thrown that off the table and said, look, we're not going to do that anymore. We just go straight to Beatport.
And then if that 10%, if that should go then back to the artist.
Yeah, exactly right.
And or if it's
minus the publisher's bit.
Yeah, right. Okay. So if you're publishing your track with Centric, you've uploaded it, you've done that process, then you would be connected to the Beatport thing, or if you sold via Beatport, then you would start receiving that money as well.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think we'll only realize how significant it is in about a year's time when everyone starts to look at the number in their statement for Beatport revenue and realize how different it's become for how it used to be, and realize the time between the download and the income from the download has kind of dropped by 2 years and is now much, much quicker, and how the amount per download has gone up because they're not losing it in far-flung territories with bad systems.
Yeah, essentially you're making more money as an artist, which is in this time, well, in any time it's amazing, but especially in this time when you can't go on tour, that's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the Beatport centric online sign-up tool is available. Cool. I think if you just type in Beatport centric, you will probably see that come up, which is their kind of access portal to our publishing functionality as well.
Cool. I will find that link, and I'll put it in this show notes and on YouTube below.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Well done. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's I think it's the start. I think everyone's starting to look at every contract, every deal, everywhere, whatever your role is in the music industry, and question if it's got the right value or got the right output, whether you're looking at your manager's contract, your artist's contract, your agent's contract, whatever you're looking at, everyone's got, probably the exception of publishers actually, but nearly everybody's got a little bit of time to question everything in a positive way and go, am I getting what I want? And is this the thing that I need? And we were in a good position going into this year that we knew that this deal was going to press ahead, and we had other things in play in terms of our creative offering that meant that we were kind of going into a very, very confidently into 2020. And I'm very pleased that we were going in confidently, because it's meant that we've been able to provide a critical lifeline to some people. We've been able to push some people on. We've been able to support some people's changes in their creativity. We're working on album projects with artists that may not have made albums before in the same way they want to. We've been bringing incredible songs and songwriters to what previously might have been instrumental, kind of down-tempo electronic tracks, and turn them into something completely different. So from a publishing perspective, it's been an incredible year. I've never had the opportunity to listen to so much amazing music, because it's being left to breathe by the producers. And something that may previously have started life on a plane and then finished in a studio a week later, and maybe sent off as a demo a week after that, might now take 2 months to perfect, because the time is there, and it's being designed for different environments. It's designed for people running or driving or sitting at home or sitting in the garden or on Spotify or on radio. And so, kind of an unseen win from a painful year has been just a boom in creativity, which I think we'll see the benefit of as we head into the winter and come out again in the spring. I think there'll be some just incredible music coming up.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there's a lot of people just making music, and which is nice, and just focusing on that, which is really nice, you know.
Yeah, I think the return of songwriting is that unseen win, but it's of course it comes at a pretty gruesome cost in terms of the economics of electronic music.
I guess one question is, I guess if you're I guess the next question is if you're working with like a lot of people are now working with vocalists, and a lot of people this will be new for them. I guess within my audience is new for them. What happens with publishing then? Obviously, because then you have maybe a songwriter or someone that's sung. Obviously, then you're splitting it, and what's the kind of standards for those splits? I guess
we're quite hands-on and helpful in how we do it. So our creative team has a standard template that they will share at the beginning of a project and say, look, if this is a full song, these are the terms you're agreeing to work on. You're going to share everything halves. If it's a hook, if it's just a few sentences you're going to take, then that percentage is going to change. And it's usually up to the songwriter to come in and determine what their terms are, because some will want a fee for their time plus splits. Others will maybe because they're earlier in their career are happy just to work on the splits for now. And so there's a whole ream. And what we do is we agree with the songwriter so that everybody knows what's happening from the start. But expect halves. And of course, predominantly because when you take the song away, you've still got 100% of a track there that exists without it. The instrumental is 100%, if you see what I mean. So we feel that 50-50 is the right way to go. And we're working on around since the beginning of the summer. I think now we've reached the 100th collaboration. Some of those have come out of online writer camps. We've had to move a different way of working, which has worked really well, putting kind of the producer at front and center of an online process with songwriters kind of circling around over a 4-week period where they share the projects, come together for a big listening session in the middle, and then go off and finish them for 2 weeks afterwards. So that's cool. That's been really interesting. So yeah, but you're right. The point that we're kind of teaching is the wrong word, but helping what would normally be an electronic music producer who's looking for sample-free vocals to experience the joy of working with a human being that writes something completely new and completely fresh to the track that they've made is quite a journey and a positive one.
The next thing is, I guess, a lot of labels are then signing those music, and a lot of labels are then claiming publishing within those contracts. If you've already published it via your system, I guess then you would just tell them that you're already published and that needs to come out.
Exactly. There will be some labels that will dig in and say no publishing, no release. I think they're few and far between. I think everyone recognises the ecosystem is healthier when everybody works together, and you have to respect the deals that were done before, especially where it's an exclusive songwriting agreement or exclusive publishing agreement. Those rights just simply aren't available. So my advice is, if you have your publishing, stick to your guns because you have your publishing. If you don't have publishing and you want to sort of spread it around single track publishing with different labels, then do it that way. I'm not saying what the best model is, but if you're in an exclusive deal, they're not your rights to give away. They're not for the label's rights to take, rather. So yeah, I
guess if it was a really big label, then you might want to reconsider it. I guess if they really have, like, big labels have big publishing, their own kind of, like you say, like Toolroom, which is
exactly
those sort of people.
I think you have to ask the label the questions, which is, who is your publishing partner? Do they globally represent the music? Do they pitch the music for sync? Do they collect through strong collection processes? And if that's the case, and if you're confident that the partner that the label has, or the in-house team that the label has, because I can think of some really good in-house publishing teams like Hospital Records, for instance, if they're strong, either outsourced or in-house teams, then be confident. But if your questions are met with answers you don't like, then think twice.
Those are really good, really useful. So I guess a lot of artists that listen to this will be just single people on their own, no managers, no kind of, they're just doing it themselves. So yeah, that was really useful. Like I'll make a download for people to have those questions as well.
This is a whole podcast of its own, but one of the biggest challenges I think for electronic music, given the amount of music that's signed, like the volume of it, is in a standard indie world of a band that makes an album that takes a year to make it, and then maybe spends 6 months getting ready for tour and then spends a year touring and then takes 2 years off to write the next one. There's one contract to sign in there, which is for an album and a number of singles with a high budget. And so when you go to the lawyer and the lawyer quotes you 1,500 quid or 500 quid or £1,000, it's not a problem because it's an album and that's 2 years of your life you're committed to. When you're releasing 2 tracks a month, 500 quid on an electronic music record label contract the economics don't make sense. So nobody goes to a lawyer, and you can't find a lawyer that's going to do it for 20 or 50 quid. So we're always there to look at contracts and to point to the bits that we think someone needs to look to. We can't give legal advice, and we're not lawyers, but we can say, look, you need to look at clause 3, 6, and 7G because that's where the interesting stuff is. The next stage is up to you, but we recommend you get a lawyer. But we are in that weird situation where too many contracts in electronic music never see a lawyer because the economics don't make sense. Because I mean, you'll know as well as I do where the biting point is in Beatport to make it worthwhile economically, and where the rest of it is fun and hobby and fabulous or gets you gigs. To be blunt, there's like a kind of the colours go up to green, don't they?
Yes.
And that's a problem because eventually you have kind of unregulated label contracts that are whipping around the industry that people are signing, and they have hidden dangers within them from a legal perspective.
There's a lot of contracts that are tiny that essentially 3 points on them, and you're just like, where's the rest of it? It's like,
yeah. And also a lot of those contracts are invalid from a legal perspective, but to act on their lack of validity will cost you money with a lawyer. So you're caught there. So every which way you go, there's nothing you can do. So how we wrestle that, I think thankfully there are an increasing number of really good distributors who will guide and advise labels and what a meaningful contract is that's legitimate and legal and balanced, and you can put that into your distribution system and that becomes the norm. And so that we're getting an increasing amount of standardization around fair contracts, which is a good thing to see.
That's really good.
That needs to continue.
I've still got the one that you gave me, so I'm all good for my labels.
I need to check that. Everything changes all the time. It's pretty out of date.
Yes. Oh, yeah. If you've got a new one, I'd love a new one. I think we're nearly there. I guess, is there a top? I love a top 5. Is there a top 5 of do's and don'ts?
That's a really good question. So I think in electronic music today, or anywhere in the music industry today, if you can't afford a lawyer, and if you haven't got a manager, do have a learned, respected friend you can turn to before you make decisions. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely critical. And if that's your publisher or your wizened old producer friend, whoever it needs to be, if it's your coach, if it's the first label you work with that you respect, just have somebody that you can turn to say, is this contract all right? Is this person okay? What do you think I should do here? I think everyone needs a mentor and supporter, because it's difficult to do it by yourself. And there's a lot to keep your eye on. That's advice number 1. Advice number 2 is make sure that you, in the absence of a manager, and by the way, if you are looking for a manager, it is one of the most committed relationships you'll have. And I've seen more lives torn apart by bad managers than bad partners. So, there's more to mess up. So I would pick managers with great care. And actually managers pick artists with great care, because you should be rushing into a lifelong commitment. So learn about it, date each other first would be my advice. But if you haven't got a manager, put a team around you that have been recommended by many. So don't fall into the first deal and think it's the best one. Take your time picking publishers, take your time picking labels, take your time picking agents, take your time picking PR companies, get word of mouth references. Everything's always very exciting in the early days, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you kind of pick the first one that comes along, you may live to regret it. So don't, because it's avoidable. I think regrets are avoidable. I think number 3 on the creative front, and I guess there's a theme here, but have a creative mentor. Have somebody that you can turn to that will give you ears on music and give you constructive feedback. And the one person you give permission to say that's rubbish. Because I think my experience of producers that work by themselves is 2 things happen. They either finish too quickly when they could have spent more time getting it from 75% to 95%, brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Or they go past 100 and into version 78. And version 6 was the perfect one, which was raw and had the energy of the dance floor and the naivety of accessibility. So I think it's really important to have that kind of that alter ego that can check off your work and either rein you in or push you on. I think it's important to have integrity. And I don't necessarily mean as a human being, but that would be great. But musical integrity. You know, I do see artists that follow trends brazenly rather than strike out and say, this is my signature, this is who I am. And I think it's from a music, it's difficult because I can feel the bullets coming my way for kind of saying it at this point, particularly as I'm not a creative myself, but you can feel within seconds of a track, the one that was made from a place of integrity and the one that was made from listening to track X and then kind of mirroring it as much as possible in the hope that would get them on label Y. And I do think this is the year when we can kind of start to breathe and go, you know what, my signature's not going to be that. I'm not going to make that track. I'm going to make these. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think anyone should feel they need to be hemmed in from who they really are as an artist. I think that's 4, but there's probably about 20 in those 4. And then 5, don't assume that everything you know is everything you'll ever know, because everything's always changing.
Yes.
And everything you think you knew could be wrong next year. So
next month.
or next month. And actually, the first 4 things I've probably said are already wrong. So, it is, it's a freaky old industry, and you do need to stay on top of it without taking it too seriously, because otherwise you go mad. So those have been my 5 bits of advice, which if you ask me to remember them now, I won't. I'm too old. But that's right. I mean, I think essentially the theme is have mentors, take time, be authentic, produce with integrity, and always keep learning.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I've wanted to, like I said up at the start, I wanted to do this for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got to chat. Thank you so much for your time. And congratulations on that deal with Beatport. It's like I said, when I read it, I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Well done."
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Well done. And thank you for your time. It's been good fun.
Wicked. Take care, Graham.
See you soon, man. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you got lots out of it. If you did, what was your biggest takeaway in the comments below? If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing, and please hit the like if you've enjoyed it. The likes really help the reach of these videos and help other people find them and see them. If you work with other artists or you're friends of other artists, share it to them and get them knowledge about publishing. It's really important to get your publishing locked down and have a good understanding of publishing. It's going to help you in the long run. As I said at the start, I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm streaming on Twitch Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So come and join me on Twitch, and we chat about this all the time. 1 p.m. till 5 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've been Graham Farmer, and I'll see you in the next video. See you later. Bye-bye.